It's very difficult for me to be talking and doing the slides and checking all of your questions at the same time. If you do have questions, I'll try and answer them, and maybe otherwise I can answer them in a maybe separate document which we can send. I will in fact give you a link afterwards to somewhere where you can get you can download a PDF with some of the information from this talk, and I'll show you a link as well where you can ask me any questions after the talk. Okay, let's begin straight away then with, I thought we should start with a warmer. Okay, this is a very simple little warmer, and I'd like you to do this. So if you've got maybe a piece of paper and a pen with you, the three-letter game, very, very simple. All that's going to happen, I'm going to give you three letters. Okay, so I'm going to give you, let's see, I'm going to give you, the first letter is an R. The second letter that I'm going to give you is a T. And then I also give you the letter N. What I want you to do is, can you think of any words in English which contain those three letters? Okay. Now, they don't have to begin with any of those three letters, and they don't have to go in that order. Okay. So I can see some people are already giving me lots of words. For example, we could have train. Yeah. So you see, it contains the three letters, but not in that order. And then we've got north. And one little thing to think about is think about word formation, because maybe you think of a word like train, and maybe you can make a new word from train. Okay, can anybody else, can you keep on adding some words there? Let's see how many we can think of. Trainee, that's a nice one. Return is one that I think I also have. Any more? Warm team, naughty. Routine, yes. Trying, perfect. We've got lots of words, okay? So this would be a warmer, wouldn't it? A simple way of beginning your class, getting the students to think in English, and getting them to think of vocabulary. One thing I think about warmers in general, and in general with any activity that you add to your course book, it's nice when it doesn't need any particular material. Here, to do this activity, all you're going to do is you're going to use the blackboard, you're going to write those three letters on the board, and it's as simple as that. You don't need anything else. Very simple to set up, no time to set it up, just immediately, automatically done, and very quick. Let's see, I wonder how many words we have got. I have already thought of some words before, and this is my list. Did you have any of these words? Actually, rotten seems to be one of the ones that seems most popular, and then I haven't got it. I think you're all punks thinking of Johnny Rotten. Well, I've got it at the end, have I? Yeah, just at the end. Right, very simple activity, very simple warmer, and just a very simple way of getting the students to begin to think in English. And really, you can see that the words are all sorts of different levels, so you could do this with really, as soon as you've gone past A2, I think this would work very, very easily. So, simple warmer. We'll come back in a second to the idea of exactly what is a warmer, but you get the idea. We're setting off with a simple activity that anybody could do, 5-minute activity. Now, another activity, this is, can you see here, my cards? Okay, alphabet cards. Now, I've got all of these sets of cards here, and you can do different activities with these cards. Okay, I made these cards, I think about, I don't know, when I was a trainee teacher a long, long time ago, probably about 30 years ago, I think. It took me half an hour to make, but I used them for lots of different things. One activity that I do with these is class spelling, okay? Now, what I do is I take my cards and I give each student a card, I give them a letter. Obviously, depending on the size of your class, you can give different students more than one card. And what I do is I dictate words to the class, and they come out, if they have a card, a letter, which appears in my words, they come to the front of the class. Now, this I took some photographs. This is a class, which is an advanced class. It's using Gateway B2+. And we did a CAE practice test, and we looked at some of the vocabulary afterwards. I gave the cards out, and I asked them to spell the words. This word was the word wrench. Okay, wrench, which is actually a good word because it has a silent letter. And you can see the students who had cards which appeared in that letter had to come to the front of the class and get in position to spell the word. Here you can see that they're still trying to organize. The good thing about this activity is that the students who are not coming to the front of the class because they have a letter, they are all sitting and they are checking if the spelling is correct. Okay? If you look at that there, is the spelling correct? Wrench. We hopefully see that yes, they've got it right, okay, which is why they're looking so happy. Now you can do this of course with lots of words. As I say, this is an advanced class. This is a great activity just for beginners really too, when they're learning to spell words in English. There's some movement, and we'll talk about that in a second, okay, but there's some movement in the activity. In fact, the word after wrench that I gave them was a difficult word. It was doubtless, okay, doubtless. And here they are spelling the word doubtless, you can see, so there's quite a lot of them there. Actually, they look a little bit like criminals there, standing before the photo shoot when they've just committed a crime, okay? So you can see the word is doubtless, yeah. So we've got D-O, yeah, U-B-T, a difficult word to spell again. So it's very useful, this, for words that are precisely difficult to spell. And you can see that there is a girl, in fact, I think, who has lifted her card up there at the front, okay? And that, of course, is because it's double S, okay? So that's one thing to remember. My set of cards only has each letter of the alphabet once, okay? So they only have one letter of the alphabet, which they use once, and that means then that if there is a double letter, like double S, then what they do is they hold the letter up to mean that it is a double letter. Now, one of the things I think that the students like about this activity is that it is physical, that the students are actually moving. And these are high-level students, but still just getting up from your seat from time to time is just a nice activity because it wakes you up. And as we said, a great way just to sort of start off the lesson to wake the students up right from the beginning. Another thing that we can do with our alphabet cards is what I call a category scramble. Now to do this, here we do need lots of space, okay, so it's sometimes a problem. What we do is we can put the cards on the floor, we just leave them on the floor in any order, and then you shout out a category. So you say, for example, countries, okay. Now each student has to come, take a card quickly, and they have to be ready to spell a word beginning with this letter which is in the category. Okay, so for example, a student takes this and they would maybe give me the country. What country could you give me with B? B for? Brazil, Belgium, Bolivia, Bulgaria. Excellent, okay. Now, the last person to take a card loses a life. Okay, so it's a competition. If you are the last person to take a card, you lose a life. If, for example, a student takes a card, they take the W, and the problem is afterwards they think, can anybody think of a country with W? W, anybody? I think my students would find it difficult. I suppose we've got Wales, haven't we? We could have Wales. But actually, if we can't think of a country, we also lose a life. Okay, so very simple, yeah? Now, like I said, there is a lot of movement in this activity and the students get excited, which is good, and it can also be bad. And we'll come back to this in a second. We'll talk about the problems of, if you like, extreme warmers. And I would say that this is an extreme warmer because the students are moving, they're possibly even pushing each other a little bit, there's probably lots of noise. And one thing I would recommend is that you warn your colleagues also, because maybe they're going to make too much noise. That might be the case also for the next warmer, which is I'm sure an activity that you sometimes do. Of course, sorry, with the category scramble you can do countries, you can do any category of words, yeah? So we could do transport, we could do clothes, we could do anything, okay? Now, another warmer, as I said, I'm sure, has anybody done the running dictation? A running dictation is when students are, for example, working in pairs. One of the students maybe is inside the classroom and they are the person who's going to write down the dictation. Meanwhile, you put a text or maybe a list of words outside the classroom, and what happens is student A goes out of the room, they look at the text, they look at the list of words, they try to memorize it. They memorize as much as they can, and then they run back into the classroom to dictate to their partner. Okay? Now, you can do this with a complete text, or you can do it with words, just categories of words. In fact, I was doing this with Gateway B2+. We have words here which are for take, make, and do. So my students, they had 3 columns, take, make, and do. Student A had to leave the room with their book, but they couldn't take their book back into the room. They had to memorize the words, dictate to their partner, and of course the idea was to make it a race. Which group could finish first? Now, again, one thing that I think is important is that not all classes are going to do this well, because some of them maybe will become a little bit destructive. Some of them may make too much noise. Some of them may be pushing. Actually, you can see even in the picture that there's a little bit of pushing going on here. And I did this recently, and I must admit that I did have to tell my colleagues what I was doing, because immediately my colleagues were coming out thinking, what's happening here, that they're playing, but actually what they're doing, of course, is something very useful at the same time. Okay, so in other words, this is an activity which, think about what you're doing, think about the dynamics. And I think we could say that we've got warmers, and then we've got things which are like extreme warmers. Extreme warmers because it's actually raising their energy, and it could even be too much. What I've done then is, the next slide, I wanted to analyze what exactly is a warmer. What do I consider as a warmer? I think there are many different definitions maybe of a warmer, but this is what I think a warmer is. I think the typical qualities, probably it should be short. Okay, so if your warmer is taking 30 minutes, then it's not really a warmer, it's half of your class. Okay, a warmer is probably going to be a short activity, and maybe it's going to be against the clock, so it's going to be some type of race, and that will make it faster, and it will also help to raise the energy. I would say that warmers are often interactive. We've seen with the running dictation, students are working in pairs. I would say for the first activity we did with our 3 letters, it also works better if they're in pairs. So the warmer is not just introducing the students to English, it's also introducing the students to each other so that they are beginning to work together, and they will work together for the rest of the class. Possibly they're going to be interactive and also competitive. So if it is a race, if it is a competition, you might make the activity go faster, and you might make it more fun. And I think actually the word fun there is really important, isn't it? That probably a warmer is going to be some sort of fun activity that they enjoy, because your idea of the warmer really is to get the students to enjoy English and start off on a positive foot. Also, I would say that a warmer is getting students to think in English. And somebody mentioned, I think I've just seen a comment about revision. Yes, I would agree. A warmer is just a great time to get students recycling, revising the language that they've done in English. They've just come from history, they've just come from maths, they've just come from PE, and a warmer is the idea of getting them to think, okay, now you're going to stop thinking in Spanish, you're going to stop thinking in Russian, you're going to stop thinking in your language, and you're going to begin to think in English. I think warmers typically may well include speaking in particular. And we've seen, for example, our running dictation will probably involve a lot of speaking. They have to dictate to each other. And the good side is that they're practicing oral English. The bad side is, as I said before, maybe we're going to make too much noise. So I think that as long as we warn our colleagues, then we should be okay. And the last point is that warmers may raise energy levels. We saw that with the spelling cards, the students are coming out to the class, so there's some movement. Maybe there's some running. With the running dictation, there's obviously running. That can be good, and again, the only thing is it could be a problem with too much movement, and too much noise and too much pushing. Okay? So, all of those 7 factors are important. One of the problems I think that I have with my teenage students is that they are already warm when they come into class, and sometimes they're too warm. They're actually full of energy, and maybe what we need is actually a cooler, okay? And I think coolers are things that we sometimes don't talk about. We talk about warmers, but maybe we don't talk about coolers. What is a cooler? Well, a cooler, obviously, from definition, the opposite of a warmer. And so, for example, typical qualities, I would say, instead of being interactive, they are probably going to be individual activities. Not always, but probably they will be individual. Probably they will involve concentration. So instead of movement, we've got this concentration, we've got students thinking and focusing on the activity. Also, the same as a warmer, a cooler, the idea of a cooler is still getting students thinking in English. And maybe the key word here is thinking in English, okay? So with a cooler, we're getting them to concentrate and to focus, okay? Then another quality would be maybe, instead of speaking, a cooler may well involve listening and possibly writing, because I think those two activities tend to need a little bit more concentration on the part of the student. And a cooler, the opposite again of a warmer, maybe it's a silent activity, maybe it's a quiet activity. And maybe the last point is that it's slow, it has a calming effect. So we saw with our alphabet cards, we saw the students moving around a lot. We saw with our running dictation, the students are running, pushing, maybe shouting. The idea of the cooler is the opposite. It's getting this calming, relaxing effect, but one that's still a positive effect because it's encouraging the students to concentrate. Now, I'm going to give you some ideas for coolers, 2 or 3 ideas that I hope you'll find useful. One is a favorite of mine, opposite dictation. Okay, so the opposite dictation, in fact I'd like to try and do this. Can you all just find a piece of paper and a pen? We're going to try and do this across the planet Earth right now, an opposite dictation. If everybody can get a pen and paper, can you all do that? And what I'm going to do, I am going to dictate a very short text to you, but what I want you to write down is the opposite of my text. Now, this is very important to make it clear to the students, is that an opposite, in this case, is very relative. You can decide what you think is an opposite. So, for example, if I begin, there was an old woman, it doesn't matter if you think that the opposite of that is there was an old man. It doesn't matter if you think the opposite is there was a young woman. It doesn't matter if you think the opposite is there is a young man. It's all totally what you want to decide is the opposite. Okay, so there is no right or wrong answer. Okay, does everybody understand that? Everybody's got me? You can just tell me yes. Right. Okay, we've got lots of ideas already. Right. I'm going to dictate 3 sentences to you. On your piece of paper, can you write down the opposite of what I say? Okay, let's begin. There was an old woman who lived in a beautiful old house. Okay, everybody got that? There was an old woman who lived in a beautiful old house. Remember, you're writing down the opposite. Okay? I'm going to continue. She had 5 black cats and a dog. Okay, she had 5 black cats and a dog. And the last sentence, she loved playing chess and drinking tea. Okay, so she loved playing chess and drinking tea. Okay, I can already see you've got some great ideas. I want you to think for a second about doing this in class. When we're doing this in class, the students are listening. They're paying attention to you. Actually, dictation, I think, is often a good way of getting the students to concentrate. If they don't listen, then they can't do the activity. So they have to be quiet. Also, it's not just a traditional dictation. They have to think a little bit, and I think it's more enjoyable because there is different variations that we can have. So the students are interacting more than in a traditional dictation. But basically, I think we've got an activity where the students are quiet, the students are thinking, the students are listening to you, and I think that's a good thing. When they're writing down, hopefully they're going to take care of their spelling, and also they're going to be concentrating on writing, punctuation in general. In other words, we've got a quiet activity. It's a short activity still, but it's a quiet activity where the students are focused, the students are concentrating. One thing that you can do with this activity is when you finish, is you can ask the students to compare their texts. And we think that the texts will be all the same, but in fact they'll probably be very different. I can see a great text that somebody's written here. There was a young woman who lived in an ugly new house. She had 5 white cats and no dog. She loved playing backgammon and drinking coffee. That is brilliant, and the great thing is that all of our students will probably have similar but different texts. A great thing that you can do at the end of that activity is that you can now ask your students, because they wrote down the opposite dictation, you can now ask the students to reconvert their text to make it exactly the same as your original text. Could somebody write down what they think was my second sentence? What exactly did I say? Can anybody tell me? What was my second sentence? You see, what you have to do now is work from yours and go backwards. That's right, somebody's got it, yeah? It was she had 5 black cats and a dog. And the last sentence? What was my last sentence? Again, the good thing about this is that it's asking the students to concentrate and to think back. Right, was it she loved playing chess or she loves playing chess? It was she loved playing chess and drinking tea. Perfect, yeah. Okay, great. We've got 2 activities. We've almost got 3 activities in one. We have the original dictation, where the students listen and write the opposite. We have interaction, where students compare stories. And thirdly, we have reconverting the text back to the original. Now, I gave you this simple little text. It's quite a funny little text, very, very basic. What you can do with your students, again, using Gateway A2, why not dictate a text from the book? So in the Gateway to Exams, Units 1 and 2, here I have a text which would be perfect. My text, every summer, 15-year-old Luke Jones goes to school. Okay, so we can use the text in our textbook and do exactly the same thing. So instead of every summer, we could say every winter. Instead of saying 15-year-old, we could say 50-year-old. And instead of saying he goes to school, we could say he goes on holiday. So instead of just making our text, inventing a text ourselves, why not use a simple activity? As somebody said before, recycling. Recycling is great. So you can recycle your texts from the course book just by doing this simple opposite dictation. Okay? I can't see your faces. When I teach, I love seeing people's faces to know if they're listening to me. Is everybody following me? Am I speaking too fast? Are we okay? Great, good. I shall continue then. I think we're about halfway through. Great. Now, another cooler, okay? Another cooler. This activity has saved my life once or twice, I will tell you now. We all know about word searches, right? Everybody does a word search from time to time. My activity now is called a DIY word search, a do-it-yourself word search. What does it mean? What I do is I give this piece of paper to my students, and they make the word search themselves. So what they do is they write in words. So they write down a word here, for example. They write down a word here, and they write down, for example, maybe they could write the word here as well, or maybe they could just put a definition. Okay. The words could be diagonal, whatever you want. They can be backwards, anything you want. You could write definitions here. You could write the word here. You could give even picture clues for low levels at A1 plus, A2 level. Why not draw pictures here? And the students have to find the words inside the word search. Okay. Now, this activity it's a cooler because the students are concentrating, the students are recycling vocabulary. They can be doing this quietly, they can be talking to their partner in a soft voice as they're doing it, but basically it's just a very, very simple activity. But it's useful because it's recycling vocabulary, and it's useful because it's getting the students to concentrate and to really pay attention to what they're doing. Maybe the only drawback in some ways with this activity is it's longer than a normal cooler, because this activity could take a long time. Yeah, somebody's just mentioned that. I would agree, it does take a long time. But that is why, as I said before, this activity has saved my life many a time, because, as people are mentioning, it needs no preparation. And, you know, I don't know if this happens to you. Sometimes you have a day when maybe you're not feeling very well, or maybe you're just not feeling so full of energy. This is just a great activity when you're not feeling like bouncing around the classroom and being as energetic as you usually are. Then this is the sort of activity that can save your life, because it keeps them busy and it gives them something to do. Yeah, I can see a lot of people agree with me. Yeah, I think this is real life, isn't it? As a teacher, there are days when it's great to be full of energy and do our running dictations, but there are some days when we just need to find a little bit of quiet time for ourselves. But the important thing is that I genuinely think the students enjoy this, because they do enjoy doing an activity like this. Of course, when they finish, you can either photocopy them for the rest of the class, or they can simply pass them around. They can pass them from one student to another. Okay, now that's a do-it-yourself word search, and why don't we do a do-it-yourself crossword? Okay, so again, very simple. You've got the grid. They can write their definitions here. Very useful, of course, for relative pronouns. So it's a person who, it's a thing which, it's a place where, and the students write their answers. Of course, some of the squares they will have to shade in and color in. But that will, again, take quite a long time, but great for vocabulary revision. And of course, the really great thing is that the students are doing the work and you're not. You're going around moderating, monitoring, you're checking that they're doing the activity, but it means that you can pay attention to what they're doing, but they are doing the work, okay? One thing I mentioned before, somehow I can make available a handout with some of these ideas on, and the handout has a link where you can find empty grids. Actually, if you just put into internet do-it-yourself word search or do-it-yourself crossword, you'll find lots of different grids, okay? But anyway, I'll make sure at the end of the session that you'll know where to look for a handout. Right, now, what I want to do for the last quarter of an hour is to think now about warmers and coolers in the context of a whole lesson, okay? So we've got a lesson plan here. This was a real lesson plan that I saw a long time ago. This was a lesson that I watched. Just to give you some background, it was a class of 25 students, okay? The students were 13 years old, and they were elementary students. They were A2. And the lesson lasted for an hour. Now, I'm going to show you the plan, the lesson plan, but I will tell you now that when the teacher taught this lesson, she had lots of problems with classroom management, okay, classroom management. And I want you to look at the lesson plan, and can you suggest any reasons why you think maybe there were classroom management problems, okay? This was the lesson plan, okay? We've got stage 1 is 10 minutes of vocabulary presentation, and you can see that it's the teacher is explaining the vocabulary to the students. Okay. Stage 2, the students read instructions on how to make a mushroom salad. Okay. They read it and they put the instructions in the correct order. Okay. You can see we've got 20 minutes here, and the students are working individually. Okay. Stage 3, correct by reading aloud the instructions in the correct order. So the teacher is correcting, and it's 5 minutes, but we've got teacher to student again. And then we've got stage 4, students write similar instructions for a different type of salad using words and expressions from the mushroom salad text. That's 25 minutes, and the students are working individually, okay? Why do we think then that this is not such a good lesson plan? Well, I can see what you're putting down here straight away, and I agree with you. We've got a long time, haven't we? We've got a long time, for example, for this stage 2. We've got reading the instructions, 20 minutes of individual student work. We've got this 25 minutes writing in class with the students working individually. Now, if we think about warmers and coolers, do you think each activity is warm or cool? By cool, I don't mean cool like awesome cool, I mean like cold. Would you say the first activity is warm or cold? I think that maybe the first activity, it depends, doesn't it? Maybe the first activity is fine. We've got like some teacher presentation, which is fine. But I think when we get onto stage 2, a lot of you are saying, yeah, there's no warmer, it's not very well balanced, is it? And in terms of time and pace, I think that really it's slightly problematic, yeah. You're saying cold, and I agree. And I would say the problem with this lesson is that it is all a bit cold. And I suppose what we're saying really, which is obvious, but sometimes we don't think about it in those terms, is when you have a lesson plan, before you go to teach your lesson, don't just think about the skills work, don't just think about the vocabulary, don't just think about the grammar, think about, is this activity going to warm my students up? Is it going to get their energy levels high, or is it going to be getting them too concentrated, too focused? I think really the secret, of course, will be having this balance, won't it? Having the balance. If we're talking about planning lessons then, what things are important for teenagers? Okay, so I'm talking particularly about planning lessons for teenagers. First thing is the relevance to the students. Now, how much do you think our students like mushroom salad? A lot? Not that much? I think that my students are not too mad about mushroom salad, okay? Some might, absolutely, and this is really making big generalizations. I think with my students here, if I was talking about mushroom salad, this would probably be the reaction of most of my students. By the way, I don't know where this photo came from, but it must have been a great lesson, mustn't it? I don't know if it was mushroom salad, but this is, yeah, a painful reaction on the part of the students, okay? Yeah, somebody's mentioned pizza. Now, why not? Pizza could be perfect, yeah. How relevant is it? Now, if any of you have been to my talks when I've been traveling around the world, I often also point out that the opposite can be true. Because maybe a mushroom salad is not so interesting, but maybe we can go into our lesson tomorrow and think, I know, I'm going to talk about Miley Cyrus, okay? Now, I think for me, Miley Cyrus is almost the opposite of the mushroom salad. That some are going to get so excited about the whole topic that they're not going to speak in English, they're going to shout in their own language, they're going to start talking in Spanish about the MTV Awards, and I would say that this is a problem. And I think really that's why, of course, with Gateway, if any of you are Gateway users, that's why, of course, I've tried to go for a middle ground, if you like. And so I think the key is making it relevant to the students because they find it interesting. This was an interesting text from the B2 plus level about, if anybody knows this, it's called El Camino de la Muerte, Death Road in, I think it's Bolivia. Yeah. This gets them excited, interested, but focused, okay? So somebody's been there, have they? Wow, it must be an amazing place. I've got a great video, actually, a video link to that. Of course, the students find this really interesting, the fact that this was such a dangerous road. Now most people do this cycling, I believe, yeah? And even cycling, apparently it's quite dangerous. I know there's somebody there who's done it, which must be amazing, yeah? In other words, step one of planning a lesson, I think, is making the students, making the content relevant and interesting to the students. Thank you. Somebody's making a nice comment about Gateway. Thank you. I couldn't help seeing that. Okay, so question number one, relevance to the students. Question number two, if you're planning a lesson, think about skills work, okay? Now I would say a whole lesson which is talking about, a whole lesson which is speaking is probably not a good idea. A whole lesson which is listening is probably not a good idea. Speaking, I think, will, of course, raise noise level and maybe make it a warmer, and listening will tend to be a quiet activity. I think what we need to do is to have that balance then. And when you look at your lesson plan, just check, Have you got too much of one thing? Have you got too much of another? And make sure that you have a balance, a combination, as you were saying, a combination of all the skills in each lesson. Another thing to think about, very important, and I think it was a big problem with our mushroom salad lesson, variety of interaction. Now, one reason that I include pair work in every lesson is not just even for the speaking. It's so that I keep the students interested and being able to talk and to be able to pay attention. And I think the same as when you go to a lecture or to a conference, sometimes when you're listening for a long, long time, then in the end they're going to be a bit too, if they're going to be listening to you for the whole of the period, in the end I think they do lose concentration. And I think it's very important just from time to time to have our communicative work, our pair work, just to make sure that the students are awake and keeping them with us. Okay, so think about that when you're looking at your lesson plan. Vital, I think, is the idea of pace and timing. As we saw with our mushroom salad lesson, then really if we've got 20 minutes of writing in class, if we've got 25 minutes of reading, if we've got 25 minutes of listening, of course the students are going to get bored and they're going to fall asleep. And then, as I've said, we can think of warmers and coolers as 5-minute activities at the beginning of the lesson, but maybe a warmer is just as useful in the middle of the lesson to wake our students up again. And I find sometimes that I'm losing my students, yeah? You can see, can't you? Sometimes you're losing your students, that they're falling asleep, that they're not interested. Maybe that's the time in the middle of your lesson to have a warmer. Let's wake them back up, get them concentrating again, doing pair work, and then we get them back to our concentrating part. Balance, isn't it? Balance. I've got a nice little picture here. Balance is the key to life, yeah? And I think that's true. I know it's sort of a little bit typical to say that balance is the key to life, but I think it's true that we need a bit of everything, okay, to have the students with us. Great. Now, of course, what is important, of course, is as a teacher we have that balance. I think it's also true that writing a book, certainly a textbook, the idea again should be balanced too. And that's why in general, I think that the idea, of course, writing Gateway, and I think any textbook writer, what we try and do is we have that balance. So if we're looking at writing, we've got a little bit of speaking, then we interrupt it maybe with a little bit of listening, a little bit of concentration, a little bit of talking. And the idea, of course, is to get that balance as much as we possibly can. And I think maybe that's where I think it's true to say that online material as well. I think online material has the advantage that we change interaction. We've talked about pair work and we've talked about whole class work, but really also online work can just be that useful part where the students break off and do something different. And I think today's teenagers who are used to doing swapping between activities, then I think that's one of the advantages again of doing online material. And even online material, it depends, doesn't it? Some can be concentrating, so it's not all online material is maybe games and things. We've got games here, but we've also got things like testing yourself, we've got grammar, we've got listening again for concentration. So in other words, the whole idea of the warmers versus coolers is basically, I would say, trying to get this essential balance to keep their concentration. Okay. Now, of course, sometimes that's easier said than done. Okay. Why? Because I think if you're thinking about teenagers, often instead of thinking about lessons, they're thinking about other things. Okay. Now, I've just got a few silly little pictures to show you. This boy, he's in a maths class. But of course, when you're 14, 15, maybe you're not always thinking about maths and graphs. Maybe this is what this boy is thinking about, okay? This is a real life picture from one of a student who's doing a maths exam, okay? I think if you really genuinely ask most of our students what they're thinking about, this is probably what they're thinking about. Or if it's still with maths, pie charts, okay? Students are maybe not very interested in pie charts, but I do have a picture here, if you'd like to see it. I've got a picture of, it says it's the world's most accurate pie chart. Has anybody ever seen this, the world's most accurate pie chart? Okay, here it is, I'm going to show you, okay? It's very good, look at this. So the pie chart, you can see it there. Yeah, it's showing the pie I have eaten, so that's this part here, and the pie I have not eaten. Okay, so our students are probably thinking more about what they're going to have for lunch actually than what we're talking about in our English classes. Mind you, this is very good for the present perfect. Okay, present perfect. Great. I'm not sure if we've got time for any questions. Maybe we've got a minute or two. I could try and answer one or two questions. Actually, meanwhile, yeah, somebody's asked the question, are warmers the same as icebreakers? Yeah, I mean, one of the things about icebreakers is that usually I use the word icebreaker to talk about an activity like a day one activity, where maybe the students have never seen each other before. So for me, an icebreaker is an activity where the students are really getting to know each other. Great for the start of the term, great for the beginning of a new course, okay? Listen, I'm just going to give you two links here. If anybody doesn't know about Gateway Online, if you go to Gateway Online, there is a teacher section, and there, I always mention this because people find it useful usually, is that there is a section there where there is a PDF, a document called Top Tips. I think it's called 25 Top Tips. It's got lots of activities that you can use with your classes there. There are some warmers and some coolers there for you. And really, the important thing I think would be, I know a lot of you are already on the Macmillan Gateway Facebook page, but if anybody isn't, then go along there, and if anybody does have a question, I think anybody who follows the Gateway Facebook page know that I always answer personally to any questions that you've got, any things that you'd like to know, any things that you'd like to know about teaching in general. Please just go along there. I'll put the PDF, the handout for this session, there on the Macmillan Gateway Facebook page, and I think Henry will also be sending you maybe a link, or maybe he can actually send you the PDF. It's been great. I think I've even finished slightly on time. You know now that you've got two great sessions. You've got Judy and Philip who are going to do a great session now at 11 o'clock. And Malcolm's going to give you a great session as well at 12 o'clock. So I hope you enjoyed the rest of the online conference. It's been great to more or less see you, okay? I'm not sure if Henry has got to say anything to you now, but otherwise, have a great day the rest of the day, or if it's night time in Australia, have a good sleep, and I hope to see you again sometime soon, okay? Thanks a lot to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave, for a great talk. Let's have a round of applause for Dave, please, guys. I thought that was smashing. Some great ideas there for warmers and coolers in the classroom. And as Dave says, I'm sure you've all got questions for him, but the best way to direct those to him is the Facebook page, because he's very good, he's very quick at replying to people, and he will respond to you on there. So, Dave, if you just want to say another quick goodbye.
Hello, can you see me? Hello.
Oh, we lost you. Oh no, you're back. You're back. Oh no, Dave's coming and going. But I'll say bye on his behalf if he's not going to be able to. I thought that was a great session. So lots of positive comments coming in, and as he said, we're going to have a short break now.
Okay. We're here to talk to you about Inspired. What we'd like to do first of all is go through, give you an overall view of the material in the course, and then go back and look at some of the distinctive special features in more detail. So Philip, you can kick off.
Thank you. We feel that Inspired contains lots of very engaging texts which will stimulate students to discuss, to learn the language, and which will really catch their interest. So we want to quickly take you through all 4 levels and show you examples of these. The first 3 are from Book 1. And here we go. Now, this is from an early unit which is about describing people, And as you can see, the topic is teenagers around the world. Now, your task is to listen to me describing one of the characters and match the teenager and the flag described. Which country is it? Type in your answers when you guess. I'm going to read now. Kumiko has pink hair and big sunglasses. Her t-shirt is black, her pants are red plaid, and she has a shoulder bag. Her country's flag has two colours, red and white. Who is it? Yes, that's right. It's the girl on the left of the picture, and she's from Japan. The next slide shows us one from Unit 5 about making comparisons. And as you can see, the focus is on climate change. Is the world's weather getting better or worse? And I wanted to show you this to give an example of how you can have real cross-curricular content at a low level and still deal with serious issues, even though the language level is low. The next slide, also from Book 1, is headed Not Born in the USA and features 4 teenagers from Nigeria, India, Russia and China. I won't ask you to type in your answers for this, but can you guess what they have in common? I'm sure you can. It's the fact that they've all come to live in the US, and this offers a great deal of scope for cross-cultural comparisons. Now, moving on to Book 2, here's another newspaper extract. It's from a lesson about describing what was happening, and it's a true story of a German teenager who claims that he was hit by a meteorite on his way to school. As I said, it's a true story, and it is the perfect context for practicing the language of what was happening. Now, I've got a very easy question for you. Who's this and what character does he play? No prizes for guessing that it's Harry Potter. And the lesson is that, you can probably see on your slide, is about talking about future possibilities. And the text has questions about what Daniel Radcliffe will do and what people will think of Daniel Radcliffe if he plays other characters. And this leads very nicely into a personalized questionnaire in which students talk about what they will do if something happens. Now, moving on from Harry Potter, from fiction, here's an example also from Level 2 of more cross-curricular content. We all know what the global positioning system, what the GPS does, and we've got them on our phones and in our cars. But do you know how it really works? This is an example of students not only learning language, but learning science and about the world. And on the science and world topic, here's one more similar one, also from Book 2. As you can see, it's headed Maglev, Train of the Future. Maglev stands for magnetic levitation, and it's a train that has no engine, no wheels, scarily no brakes, but still does 500 kilometers an hour. So again, learning language, but learning science and about the world. Finally, from Level 2, here's a lesson on describing a process. Could be potentially quite boring, but I'm sure many of you will recognize the characters, the puppets in the picture. It's an animated film, very popular, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and the context for describing a process is describing how the film was made. So that was books 1 and 2, and now over to Judy to do books 3 and 4.
Thank you. Well, as you'd expect, at levels 3 and 4, the texts are longer, so that offers us more scope for looking at cross-curricular topics. I'm trying to move this slide on. And here's a lesson from book 3, which is entitled "It All Started on a Bus," and it is about the American Civil Rights Movement. It's a skills lesson, and it's about the day in 1955 when a black woman, Rosa Parks, refused an order from the bus driver to get up from her seat so that a white man could sit down. This was the beginning of the bus boycott, and the subsequent events led to Martin Luther King, and he was the leader of the civil rights movement, the American Civil Rights Movement. So not only are students learning English during this material, they're also learning valuable social history. And in the same unit, at the end of the same unit, we have a culture lesson, as you see, entitled Women in the World. And this lesson looks at the position of women in society, their achievements, their role in government, and how and when they got the vote in different countries. And it starts with a true false quiz. And I'd like to do this with you. So the idea is that I'm going to read 6 statements, and if you think the statement is true, in each case, type T, and if you think it's false, type F. Okay? I'll give you the answer after each statement. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Women do 66% of the world's work. True or false? T or F? Lots of T's coming up. Well, you're quite right. It is true. Second statement. Women produce 50% of the world's food. What do you think about that? T or F?
T. A mixture.
A mixture. I'm not seeing it on the screen, but Henry's very helpfully telling me. 50-50. Okay. Well, that is also true. Third statement. Women earn 10% of the world's income. True. False.
All T.
Ah, you're getting the idea, aren't you? Yes, I'm afraid that statement is also true. Women own 1% of the property in the world.
T. Y. All T's.
Ah.
All T.
Predominantly T, so again, I'm afraid, yes, that statement is also true. Women make up 70% of the world's poorest people.
T. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sadly and horrifyingly, I'm afraid that is also true. And finally, women make up 64% of the people in the world who are illiterate.
Everybody thinks that's true.
Everybody thinks that's true. I think you've really got the idea. And actually, those of you who are very eagle-eyed may notice in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, upside down, it does say all the answers, all the statements are true. Yes, so that's another example of a lesson where students can find out more about the world and discuss real and serious issues. Okay, moving on. Now this skills lesson appeals to students with more visual intelligence, and we're happy to show you the pictures we've chosen in the context, what's your favourite picture? There's no prizes for guessing who the picture B on the bottom left is by. That's Picasso. Picture A is Renoir, and C is Roy Lichtenstein. And we've deliberately chosen pictures that have lots of contrast and style, so lots to talk about there. And you'll notice perhaps the opener invites students to match each of the pictures with a particular art style, so a little cross-curricular content there. More cross-curricular material coming up in this. Oh, wrong click. There could be tens of billions of planets. This is a lesson from Book 3 on making logical deductions and discussing possibility. And the text is titled, We Are Not Alone. And it examines the possibility of the existence of life on other Earth-like planets outside our solar system. It also, you'll see at the bottom of the text, gives facts about the solar system in the context of talking about logical deductions and speculations. On the right-hand page, you'll see a set of 6 images, and after the speaking activity involves students in matching deliberately ambiguous images with words in the box above. So, for example, picture A, it could be a pen, or it could be a pencil, or it could be a rocket. And in fact, it is a rocket. And picture C, it could be snow, it could be the ocean. In fact, it's clouds. So the idea is that students can speculate. It might be, it could be, it must be, it can't be, practicing the target language, but in an engaged and fun way. Just to show you the variety that there is in the course, here's another lesson from this book about one of the world's most famous athletes. And the text below this picture shows extracts from his autobiography on the topics of something I'd like to change, what I do at a race, drugs, which of course he says stay away, the future, something I rely on, someone I rely on, and winning and charity work. Those topics are listed for students to match with the paragraph. So, motivating material for sports lab students. And here is another gripping topic from the end of the book. The text is entitled Survival Against the Odds, and you can probably tell from the picture what the text is about. Yes, it's the amazing rescue of the 33 Chilean miners who were trapped deep underground in the Atacama Desert in 2010. And after reading and some comprehension questions, students are invited to talk about their personal response to the situation, as we do throughout the lesson. How would you have felt if you'd been in the San Jose mine? What would you have done to keep up your spirits and survive? No prizes for guessing that the target language of this lesson is third conditional. Oh. Right, I'd like to show you just one great lesson from level 4. As you see, this is a culture lesson about young scientists. And it's about an amazing project by teenagers for an annual scientific contest. And the teenagers in this lesson are shown from Denmark, Spain, Russia, Turkey, and Switzerland. And just one example, if I can show you with the arrow, this is Olga Gavrina. She is a Russian teenager who has discovered a way of detecting cataracts in people's eyes. You know, as people get older, their vision sometimes becomes blurred, and that's because of cataracts. And Olga has managed to work out a way of detecting these cataracts using the red eye feature on digital cameras. And the extraordinary thing is that this is usually a hospital test, but Olga, her results using her method are more than 95% as accurate as the hospital test. And this is something that even you can do at home. So that's a whistle-stop tour through the content of the course. Now let's just go back quickly and look at some more specific aspects, right? Now, you may be wondering what happens to new language, the grammar. Well, here's a lesson from book 2. It's titled I Love Going to Festivals. It's about the Glastonbury Festival in context. And the functional focus is talking about likes and dislikes. And the grammar focus is verb or gerund plus verb or preposition plus gerund. And after doing speaking and listening activities to activate the target language, you'll see here in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen a yellow box entitled Language Workout. These boxes occur in every language presentation lesson, and they invite students to complete examples, and then also there's a reference to the language file at the back of the book. And these language workouts can be exploited at any time throughout the lesson. The idea is to give both students and teachers flexibility so that they're providing support for differing classes and differing learning styles. Equally, the language file at the back of the book can be referred to at any point. The language file contains full paradigms, completed examples where students can check their answers to the language workout, of course rules, and not least, grammar practice exercises, so lots more material there. So while lessons have a functional focus, this is underpinned by a very strong grammatical strand, and that's supported by the language workout and the language file. Now what about vocabulary? Inspired has a strong focus on vocabulary. This can be seen clearly the word bank, from the word banks which occur in many of the lessons. And in this lesson, as you might deduce, the word bank, its topic is music. Let's move to another lesson. She loves skateboarding, and this is the word bank, and here the topic is leisure activities. The students are invited to match the topics of each of the images in this lesson with words from the word bank. it may be a cliche that all classes are mixed ability classes, but with Inspired we try to address this issue seriously and we hope imaginatively by adding extension activities. Now, in this lesson there are 2 extension activities. Here's one which follows a pronunciation exercise, and Fast and children are invited to think of other examples of words which contain each of 2 sounds that the activity is focused on. And the second extension activity follows a speaking exercise, and students are invited to write up notes after interviews that have been using the words for leisure activities from the word bank. There are 1 or 2 extension activities in all the first 3 lessons of each unit, and the idea is they may focus on grammar, they may focus on pronunciation, but most commonly they're communicative activities. And the idea is to provide extra stimulating material for fast finishers while other students complete an activity. And of course, equally with classes with more student hours, more teaching time, the extension activities are available for all students. So, now Philip, it's your turn.
Thank you. And I'm going to start with choice and personalization. What do I mean by choice? At the end of each unit, at all 4 levels, there is an inspired extra section. And at levels 1 and 2, there is a your choice where students are invited to choose from 2 very different activities. So you could split the class either into groups or do it in pairs. And the example which we've taken here from level 1 is either to do what animal am I, where students ask questions to guess the name of a favorite animal, or to create a world records quiz. So this is a student-created quiz about facts for the world, the biggest, the coldest, the most expensive, and so on. Students make up the quiz and then they administer it to each other. So at levels 1 and 2, there is choice which reflects different interests. This gets more interesting for me at levels 3 and 4, where we have a learning styles questionnaire where students are invited to identify their preferred learning style, and then there is a choice of 4 activities, each of which reflects a different learning style. And our aim is very much not to pigeonhole people and say, you are this kind of style, you can only learn in this way, but rather to encourage them to expand the repertoire of learning styles by becoming aware of differences and then experimenting with different styles. Now, we've talked already quite a lot about personalization. I want to show you another example of that. You remember this lesson where we looked at Daniel Radcliffe? Now, in the your response section to this, all right, here it comes. The your response to the text has 2 questions only. Why do you think some boys bullied Dan at school? What causes bullying? Now, the text doesn't exactly say why some boys bullied Dan at school. And students have to go back to the text to read it and deduce why he was bullied. And the second question then moves to the much more general issue of what causes bullying, and would lead into a class discussion of something which is a topic at most ages and in most schools. I can hear you asking, why do you think some boys did bully Dan? Very good question, just come in. Would you like to know? I hope you do, because I'm going to tell you. The text doesn't say, but we think that the reason why Dan Radcliffe was bullied at school was because he couldn't ride a bicycle, he couldn't swim, he couldn't even do up his shoes, because he suffers from a condition called dyspraxia, which affects your coordination. So, an interesting fact there about one of the most famous film stars in the world. At the beginning of each of our units, we have something called a preview. Each pair of units at all 4 levels has a 4 double-page spread preview. And actually not 4, but a double-page spread preview. And as you can see, at the top left, there is a box with communicative aims, and beneath that, a box of topics and vocabulary. And the student's first task is to match the topics, 6 of the topics and vocabulary, with the 6 pictures on the right, which come from 6 of the lessons. That's then followed at the bottom of the page by a Wordle, where students match vocabulary from the next 2 units with topics, and I'll come back to that. And then there is a listening, where extracts from lessons are matched to topics. And then at the bottom right, in this example, there is a quiz. In other previews, there's a questionnaire or a survey. But I would like to do this quiz with you. It's from book 1, from the end of book 1, and we will do the same as Judy did with you, true, false. I'll read the statements. If you think they're true, type T, and if they're false, type F. Okay? So, animal facts, true or false? 1. A hippo can open its mouth 1 meter wide. True or false?
Lots of truths.
Lots of truths. And it is true. In fact, fairly obvious from the picture. How about number 2? Nice picture of a dolphin. Dolphins can sleep with one eye open. True or false? Let's see what's coming in. Henry's got his eye on it.
Mainly true.
Mainly true. Obviously studied biology carefully at school. It's also true. The 3rd one, owls can only see the colour blue. Are the only birds that can see the colour blue? Forgive me.
No, not more false this time. Trees. You weren't quite sure.
No, well, I didn't read it out very well. It is, my friends, I'm afraid, also true. They're the only birds that can see the colour blue. The next one's easier. Penguins are the only birds that can swim but can't fly. True or false?
I only seen truths.
True, 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 and it is true. So can we keep this run of truths up? Number 5, dogs can hear sounds that people can't. True or false?
Time to respond to this one. True.
Lots of truths again. And so in fact we have 5 truths. This isn't typical of all the true-false quizzes in the course, I assure you, just the one that we've chosen here. And you will also notice that apart from being interesting, it's in the preview and we have can there for ability in each of the statements. Now I said we'd come back to the Wordle, if you remember. Let's have a look at that again. Here, Lexis from Unit 7 and 8, and 3 categories: animals, food, possessions. Don't bother to type in your answers, but have a quick go and see if you can put the words into these categories. I'll give you a minute to have a go at it. You may have to turn your head on one side or the other to read the words. Okay, that's more or less a minute, and the answers are, which I'm sure you all got right. So that was the final example that I wanted to put forward to show you things from the preview. And now I'm going to hand over to Judy again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next feature that we wanted to draw your attention to is learner independence. Every skills lesson, well, there's learner independence activities throughout the course, but every skills lesson has a dedicated section on learner independence. And then the review section also has self-assessment learner independence questionnaires. Here's an example from Book 1, the last 2 units of Book 1. And students are invited to complete a questionnaire about the communicative aims of the units they just completed. And there are workbook references to the workbook exercises if students aren't sure about something. Note that this is the last 2 units of Book 1. Philip does show you the preview for those 2 units, and the communicative aims are listed identically to those in the preview here in the self-assessment. Another major new feature, oops, I've gone back now. Oh, technology. Another major new feature of Inspired is the language links section, which occur throughout the course in the Inspired Extra pages. And this is a very recent addition to the battery of techniques that help students acquire language. The idea is that learners are encouraged to use their language awareness, including their knowledge of other foreign languages, to learn and recognize words from a common international store. So this simple example, you've got 4 different signs in English, French, German and Spanish, and the students are invited to match the words that mean the same thing in the different languages. So closed, fermé, geschlossen, cerrado. But then they're also invited to look at words which look similar. So for example, in English, entrance, and French, entrée, and Spanish, entrada. Or indeed, English, open, and German, offen. So that's one example. Here's another one. Okay, and this is, look at the different ways in which people say congratulations and match them with the languages in this box below. So you have a variety of words. Again, it's a sort of international, plurilingual language awareness. I don't think there's much doubt as to which one is Russian. And then moving on, here's a final example, and this is looking at similarities between languages. This is looking at misleading similarities between languages, and we selected from Book 4. In Book 4, we selected some of our most favourite and famous false friends and make explicit clarification of where there are differences in meaning in different languages. So, for example, here's one of them. In English, library means a place where you can borrow books, but in French and Italian and Portuguese and Spanish, a similar word means a place where you can buy books. So we're making explicit the problem, the inevitable problem of people transferring words like that and assuming that they mean the same in the target language that they're learning. Let's now quickly turn to other components of the course. So we've got the workbook, and a couple of things to highlight there. First of all, apart from the usual exercises that you'd expect, there are also extension activities in the first 3 lessons of every unit. And at the back of each workbook, there are 4 CLIL lessons. And here's one from Workbook 2. And I think you can see that the target blank is geography, tropical, oops. I've got caught up with the wires there. Tropical rainforest. And there are CLIL activities throughout the 4 workbooks. Second, the teacher's book. Aside from all the extras and suggestions and optional activities and warmers and homework suggestions and web links and so on, there are also some photocopyable activities for the first 3 lessons of each unit. Communication activities. This is an example of one from book 2 called Close Bingo, and there are 4 teacher's notes for all these photocopyable activities. The teacher's book also has a graded test CD. You may wonder whether there are songs in the students' books. No, there aren't, in fact, but there are songs in teacher's books 1 and 2 that can be photocopied, and the songs are on the CDs. So levels 1 and 2 songs are still available, but they're not actually in the students' books themselves. And of course, there's a wonderful array of digital resources. Inspired Practice Online, which offers a huge range of extra material, including exam practice and web projects and games. Interactive Classroom, invaluable software for classes with interactive whiteboards. And last but not least, teachers' websites with lots more activities and resources. So that's the insider's guide to Inspired.
Thank you very much, and we wondered if you had any questions or comments.
I'm not sure if you can see these. Are we getting them?
Thank you.
Yeah, that would help. I think they're not all coming up.
It's very small.
It's very small as well, yeah. Oh,
If
they are coming up.
If you read them out, Henry.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
We'll just say thanks.
Thank you.
What's the difference with new inspiration? Someone's asked.
New Inspiration is British English, Inspired is American English. And you may wonder why 2 British English authors write American English course books. That's because we don't write it on our own. We have co-authors and editors making sure that the differences between British English and American English are ironed out. And some of the content in Inspired is different from the New Inspiration one. For example, I showed you Not Born in the USA. Well, that isn't in the New Inspiration. There is a thing about 2 London teenagers and the pocket money, the weekly allowance. So they're not the same, and Inspired has been specifically done, and the recordings obviously, and the language. You probably notice colour spelled without a U. The whole thing is in American English.
Great. And does it contain any ideas for games?
Yes. Yes, there are games. Throughout the lessons, actually, many of the lessons contain games, but the Inspired extra pages have games, which, and also the Your Choice sections include games. So there's lots of games. Also, in the teacher's book, there are lots of suggestions. Most of the warmer activities and lots of the optional activities And the follow-up activities include games. So there's massive opportunity for games.
Excellent. I'm not seeing any more questions, and we're about done with time, so do you want to just say thanks and
Great.
bye to everyone came today?
Well, thank you very much for coming. We've really enjoyed ourselves. I hope you liked the brick wall. It is real, it's not supposed to that.
Yes, thank you very much, and great to be aware of so many of you. We almost really can see you. I'm sure most of you are in warmer places than we are. Chilly London, but in fact it's nice and sunny today, so it's not so bad. Thank you very much.
So that's goodbye from her, and it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
You just click video and talk, and then I will tell you. Recording started. In this session, we're talking about phrasal verbs. And I just want to start with a few notices before we actually start the session properly. And the first point is that I'm going to be putting up rather a lot of information on the slides over the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so. Please don't feel that you need to take lots of notes. You don't really need to write anything down, because at the end of the session, I will have a handout for you that you can download. It's basically a PDF of all of the main slides. So you don't have to take lots of notes. Secondly, I don't want anybody to think that everything in this presentation is my own original work. It really isn't. People far wiser, more learned than me have done loads and loads of work on phrasal verbs over the years, and I've stolen a lot of it. But I do want to acknowledge where I've got a lot of this information from. The Longman Grammar of Spoken and Written English, the Collins-Coville Dictionary of Phrasal Verbs, the Macmillan English Dictionary, of course. And when Steve Taylor-Knowles and I were writing the Destination series and the Laser series, we also did a lot of work on phrasal verbs. And that's filtered in to the information that I'm going to be talking about today. Do feel free to chat in the chat room, but I won't be able to look at your comments all the way through. It's very difficult to look at them when I'm talking. I'll stop at various points, give you a little task, and then I'll go back and read your comments. The next thing before we start properly, this really is just an introduction to phrasal verbs. So apologies in advance if all of this seems too obvious to you. I hope it doesn't, but there are lots of other things to say about phrasal verbs which I'd like to do in a follow-up session another time. And just a final point, I know that some of you have been here since about 10 o'clock this morning UK time, so you're getting tired and you want a break. I'll try and keep this as short and sweet as possible. We'll try and finish a bit early, but we'll leave some time for some questions if there's anything you want to ask. And maybe, Henry, perhaps you could collect the questions and you can ask them right at the end. So, phrasal verbs. Now, I want to actually start properly by asking you a question. And I don't want you to answer by typing into the chat box. I want you to answer by using the poll feature. Now, as Henry said, that's at the top of the participants box, just below your name. You can see 4 little icons. The one on the left is a smiley face, and the one on the far right should have the letter A. And if you just hover your mouse over that, you'll see there are 3 options, A, B, or C. I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to answer the question by choosing A, B, or C, and we'll look at the results. So here is the question. How do your students generally cope with learning and using phrasal verbs? Now, obviously, all students are different. Some students find phrasal verbs much easier than others, but just very, very generally, how do your students cope with phrasal verbs? A, they fall behind. B, they get by. C, they storm ahead. Just
Choose A, B, or C now, and then we'll be able to see the results. You don't have to type it into the chat box. Use the poll feature so we can see the results. So we've got 58 A's, 72 B's, 4 C's so far. So only 4 people say their students stall ahead. The majority get by, the vast majority either fall behind or get by. That doesn't surprise me. And let me just, if everyone's finished voting now, let me just clear those results. I'm clearing that. And I just want to ask a related question. And this is about you. How do you personally cope with learning and using phrasal verbs? You personally. Same thing, vote A, B, or C. And let's have a look now. Vast majority going for B. B whizzing up. Quite a few C's. 26 voting C. I storm ahead. That's good to hear. But once again, the B is going to get to 100. B 99. B 100. A 17 fall behind. Once again, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I think if I was a student learning English as a second language or as a foreign language, I think phrasal verbs would be one of the aspects of learning, perhaps of vocabulary learning, that I would like the least. I can imagine I would have huge problems. Remembering, do you, when you offer someone accommodation, do you put them up or do you put them off or do you put them out? When you delay or postpone a meeting, do you put it up, do you put it off, do you put it out? There's all these different things that are extremely similar. They all use these little words and these general words like put, set, take, etc. It's incredibly confusing. I would hate to be a student learning phrasal verbs. So what we're going to do over the next 45 minutes or so is we're going to ask, why are phrasal verbs so particularly troublesome? And by answering that question, we're going to start to understand the fundamental logic and patterns behind phrasal verbs. Because although often the particles can seem random, when you provide someone accommodation, you put them up. Why is it up? It seems random. Even though it can seem random, it actually isn't. And there is a fundamental logic and pattern behind the vast majority of phrasal verbs. So we're going to look at that. And at the same time, we're going to look at some key do's and don'ts in the teaching and learning of phrasal verbs. Now, we're going to start off by thinking about the definition of phrasal verbs. And even that is troublesome. Everything about phrasal verbs seems to be troublesome. And grammarians and linguists can't even agree on a definition. Most of them, however, agree that we probably shouldn't call all of them phrasal verbs. We should probably use a different term, something like multi-word verbs, because there are lots of different types. And one type is phrasal verbs, but we'll come on to that in a second. So just for now, I'm going to call them multi-word verbs. I don't think it really matters in the classroom what we call them. It's fine to call them phrasal verbs. But our students do need to be aware that there are lots of different types. So let's come to the definition. The definition is something like this, but as I say, not all grammarians and linguists would agree with this definition. But it's something like this. Multi-word verbs are a main verb, so like have, get, take, set, etc., plus a particle or particles, there might be more than one, and all we mean by particle is a little word. So it's a main verb plus a particle or particles where it's often difficult or impossible to work out the meaning by looking at the individual words. And the particle, we said it's a little word, that might be an adverb, It might be a preposition. It might even be another verb. For example, Andy and I don't really get on. Now there, if we just wrote get on the blackboard or the whiteboard, it would be very, very difficult with no context for our students to work out what that means. And that's why in the definition, it says it's often difficult or impossible. Of course, it's not always difficult or impossible. There are some phrasal verbs, like, for example, write down, where it's pretty obvious what it means. It's pretty obvious it's to do with writing. But for the vast majority, it's not so obvious. And another thing that makes phrasal verbs difficult, I think, is that it's not always obvious when it is a phrasal verb or when it isn't. So, for example, as we've got on the slide here, she came down the stairs. Is that a phrasal verb? No, it isn't. It's what we call a free combination. It's actually the verb to come. And how did she come? Adverbially, she came down the stairs. Compare that with she came down with flu. That is a phrasal verb. It has its own distinct meaning, to become ill with. So that's one problem that students have, actually deciding, is it a phrasal verb or not? And then, as I said, we've got all these different types. And that's why some people prefer to call them multi-word verbs. As I say, I don't think it really matters how we define them, what terminology we use, but it is important, I think, that our students recognize that each of these types have different grammatical properties. So that's what I want to look at quickly now, the different grammatical properties of each of these different types of multi-word verb. And the first type is phrasal verbs. And this is a verb plus an adverb, or an adverbial particle. There are two types, transitive, that take an object, and intransitive, that don't take an object. Just before I go any further, if anyone's just entered the room, you don't have to write all this down. You'll get a handout at the end with all of the slides on. Back to the presentation. Two types of phrasal verb, transitive and intransitive. The transitive ones take an object, obviously, and so there's a choice. You can put the adverb either before or after the object. We can say, I'll turn the TV on, or I'll turn on the TV. And that's a good test with a phrasal verb. Can you do that or not? If you can, then it's an adverb. Even though the word here, on, looks like a preposition, it's not a preposition. It's an adverb. And if you can do that, if you've got that choice, turn the TV on or turn on the TV, then it's an adverb. If you don't have that choice and you can't do that, it's not an adverb. It's a preposition. And we'll look at some examples of that in a second. But of course, pronouns, when the object is a pronoun, they complicate things further, because when it's a pronoun, you don't have that choice. So you'll say, I'll turn it on, but you can't say, I'll turn on it. And our students need to know that grammar. Whatever terminology they use to describe this particular type of multi-word verb, they need to know the grammar. And we need to compare phrasal verbs with prepositional verbs. And this is where it is a verb plus a preposition. Now, with some of them, they don't even look like phrasal verbs, really. For example, the first one, she looked at the book. That's clear, I think, that it's a verb plus a preposition, and our students aren't going to be confused by that. But look at the other two examples. The wild dog almost went for me, go for, and I came across a really interesting article. I think a lot of people would say those are phrasal verbs. They're definitely multi-word verbs, and our students need to learn how to use them. And they need to learn, one of the things they need to learn is that there's no particle movement. You can't say, I came a really interesting article across. And the reason you can't is because across here is a preposition and not an adverb. So there are prepositional verbs. Just to complicate things further, there are also phrasal prepositional verbs, which is a phrasal verb that's connected to a preposition. So for example, to tolerate, we have the phrasal verb, the phrasal prepositional verb, put up with. And you can't just separate, you can't get rid of the with, because then it loses the meaning. The with is intrinsic to the meaning of put up with. Now think about get away with. Is that the same, that with is intrinsic to the meaning, in which case it's a phrasal prepositional verb? Or can we get rid of the with? Is that something arbitrary and additional and supplementary? And is it a phrasal verb, get away? Now I just saw the question, where can you find the PDF? I'll give it to you at the end. So, Natalia, you're absolutely right. Get away with murder. Quite right. This was a trick question, in a sense, because they are two different verbs. Get away is a phrasal verb, and get away with is a phrasal prepositional verb, and they have different meanings. Get away means escape, and we can use it without any prepositions at all. He got away. We can use it with prepositions. He got away with the diamonds. He got away on a motorbike. But the prepositions there don't give us the meaning of the phrasal verb. Get away with, however, has a different meaning. It doesn't just mean escape, it means escape punishment for. So that's the phrasal prepositional verb, just to complicate things further. And then, to complicate it even more, there are other types of multi-word verb. There's verb plus noun, sometimes plus preposition. Take a look at, for example. Now, most people, I think, wouldn't class that as a phrasal verb, but some people would class take place and take part as phrasal verbs. There are verbs plus prepositional phrases. Take into account. I don't think I'd think of that as a phrasal verb. Some people would. And of course, there's verb plus verb. We had make do in the title of this session. Let go. I think most people would think of those as phrasal verbs. So there are all these different types, and they all have their own grammar, and that makes things, I think, very, very difficult for our students. In terms of numbers, some research has been done into this. I haven't done the research myself, but I'll take their word for it. There are something like 3,000 multi-word verbs in everyday use. And obviously, as you know, lots of multi-word verbs have more than one meaning. So there is something like 5,000 or 6,000 meanings of these 3,000 multi-word verbs in everyday use. And that's using just only about 45 main particles. And you can see a list of them here. Words like down, for, by, below, into, off, etc. So no wonder our students have problems. There are so many combinations, so many permutations. Now, I'd like you to think about the course books and the vocabulary books that you use or that you have used. And think about how they deal with phrasal verbs. Many of them, perhaps even the vast majority, present phrasal verbs by main verb. So you have exercises like this. Write a phrasal verb in the correct form in each gap to complete the sentences. And then we've got a list of phrasal verbs like this. Take for, take in, take off, take over, take up. And in various units, there's phrasal verbs with take, phrasal verbs with set, phrasal verbs with get, phrasal verbs with put, etc. I believe that that is the absolutely wrong way and the worst way to present and teach phrasal verbs for the first time. Would anyone like to suggest, good to see that some of you agree, would any of you like to suggest why that is such a bad way? Could you quickly type into the chat room if you have any ideas why you think that's not a good way of teaching and presenting phrasal verbs? Better to make it thematic, no context, difficult to memorize, out of context, confusing, misleading. Right, absolutely, totally agree with you. we don't teach vocabulary alphabetically. If I said to you, right, I'm going into the classroom, and here are my students in front of me. Hi kids, today we're going to learn some verbs beginning with H. Hurry, hate, heat, etc. You'd think I was mad. You'd think that is the absolutely worst way to teach vocabulary, because there's no context. It's just an alphabetical list of words. And that is the problem with this. If you look at this list of phrasal verbs, the only thing they have in common is that they start with the same 4 letters, T-A-K-E. They don't have anything in common in terms of meaning. Now, that's not always true of phrasal verbs by main verb. You might be able to get some phrasal verbs by main verb, for example, that are connected, like phrasal verbs beginning with look. But the vast majority of them, take, set, put, get, etc., they are not connected by meaning. A plane takes off, you take over a company, there's no connection in terms of meaning there. So the question then is, if we shouldn't do that, how should we present and teach phrasal verbs? And I think there are 2 main ways. The first way is to present and teach phrasal verbs just as we do one-word lexis, and that is within the context of a topic. So if we're doing, totally agree with those people saying context, 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 exactly. If we're doing the context topic of travel, depending on the level, there are certain items of vocabulary we want to teach. We might want to teach the word destination, or pack, or suitcase. A plane, when it comes into the airport, it lands. What does it do when it leaves the ground? It takes off. That's when we should teach take off, not in a list of other verbs with take that are unrelated. You get to the airport, what do? You check in within the context. Daily activities, you might want to teach, depending on the level, wake up, get up, etc., along with all the other vocabulary, like brush, brush your teeth, brush your hair. The fact that they're phrasal verbs and are more than one word makes no difference whatsoever. The fact that they have their own grammar makes no difference whatsoever. All vocabulary has its own grammar. Some nouns are countable, some are uncountable. Some verbs are regular, some are irregular. It doesn't matter. Just one more example, communication. You call someone, they don't answer, later they phone you back. That's when we should teach phone back, not in a list of phrasal verbs that are unconnected to each other. Or you get through, we don't have a list of verbs, phrasal verbs with get. So that's one way we should teach and present phrasal verbs. And a great way, I think, for students to encounter phrasal verbs for the first time is, of course, through reading. They read a text that's on a certain topic, and they will inevitably encounter phrasal verbs. And I think the key skills there are, as we said, first of all, work out, is it a phrasal verb or not? Sometimes it might look like a phrasal verb, but it isn't. Work out from the context what it means, or approximately what it means, or can you think of a synonym that fits? Understand to some extent the grammar, and understand its usage. Is it mainly used in the passive? Is it mainly used in the active? And its register and formality. Is it mainly informal English? Is it mainly used in academic writing, for example? As I said at the very beginning, this is only an introduction to phrasal verbs, so those aspects we're not actually really going to touch on today. I'll do that in another talk later on. But I think if you encounter phrasal verbs within the context of a topic, then you're able to build and develop those skills. But sometimes you will want to focus on phrasal verbs systematically within vocabulary development. And then, as we said, you should not present them by main verb. We should not do phrasal verbs with get, phrasal verbs with set, phrasal verbs with put, etc. We should present or teach them by particle. by the little words, because the particles may seem random, but in fact they're not. There is an underlying logic behind why we say put someone up, meaning ask them to offer them accommodation, and not put someone off. And the more that students can understand that logic and the meaning behind the choice of particle, then the easier they're going to find it to learn and use the phrasal verbs. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. That doesn't mean that we can just take a whole load of phrasal verbs with up and put them together and it'll all be fine. It won't necessarily. Look at this example. Here we've got some phrasal verbs with up, but I don't believe this will help our students remember them and learn them and use them. Can anyone suggest why not? Why won't this help? Anyone got any ideas? They're all phrasal verbs with up. Can anyone suggest why? Too random, different topics. Absolutely. Absolutely. Different meanings. They're not connected in terms of meaning. It's just like having a list of phrasal verbs with get, or take, or set. There's nothing in common. They have nothing in common. As it says here, there's no connection between them in terms of topic or meaning. But this, however, will help. Because all of these phrasal verbs with up, the up has the same meaning. Can anyone suggest what that meaning might be? Up meaning upwards. Yes, you're very close. Natalia has got it exactly right. Increase. All of these phrasal verbs mean the up means increase. Now look at the last one, do up a house. How can that mean increase? Well, if you do up a house, you improve it. And when you improve something, you increase the quality. So increase or improve, exactly. Can anyone suggest any other phrasal verbs with up that also mean increase or improve? Can you think of any others? Grow up, dress up, yeah, wake up, absolutely. Yeah. Any others? Okay, here's my list. Hurry up, increase your speed. Wake up, as Tommy Cope said. Warm up, increase the warmth. Dress up, as Playa said. So there are loads and loads of phrasal verbs with up that mean increase or improve. And the reason that we can lump them together and that up means increase or improve is because up is being used metaphorically. And this ties in with the last talk I did for the Macmillan Online Conference a couple of years ago, which was on metaphor, which I think you can find online if you're interested. And we said in that with metaphor, there are a few words that are fundamental concepts of location, movement, and time, such as on, off, back, ahead, etc. And we use them metaphorically. So, for example, we have this idea of height, the idea of being up, giving someone power or prestige, and lack of height, meaning somehow a loss of power, a loss of prestige. So you look up to someone if you respect them. You look down on someone if they are inferior. We say, Your Royal Highness. We have this idea of falling in love, falling in the sense of losing control in some way. If you have no power, you might be down and out. So we have this idea of up, meaning power and prestige in English and many Indo-European languages. And that can lead to some great wordplay jokes that we can use in the classroom. So, for example, a hole has appeared in the middle of the M1. The M1 is a motorway. Police are looking into it. And at the risk of destroying the joke and labouring the point, the thing there is that we've got the literal meaning of look into, the policeman standing around the hole looking down into it, and the metaphorical idea of looking into meaning investigate. A joke that a number of British comedians have told recently, including Jack Whitehall, wherever my aunt is now, I'm sure she's looking down on me. She isn't dead, just very condescending. And I like that one because the first meaning of look down is the literal meaning, up in heaven looking down. And it's only with the punchline of the joke that we get the metaphorical meaning. And the other thing I think that's interesting about that, notice that it's not just the phrasal verb that has this idea of height, meaning superiority. It's also the non-phrasal verb descend. It has the word descend in it. Here's a joke question for you. What training do you need to become a rubbish collector? Anyone know? Any idea? No? Okay, I'll tell you. None. You pick it up as you go along. The double meaning of pick up, literal and metaphorical. Why can't ghosts tell lies? Anyone know that one? Why can't ghosts tell lies? Because you can always see through them. The literal and metaphorical, yes, very good. The literal and metaphorical meaning of see through. If you put phrasal verb jokes into Google or another search engine, you'll find lots of phrasal verbs. And some of the jokes that we just had there can be found at this website address. And that's on your handout, which I'll give you at the end. And there are lots of ways we can use those jokes in class. You might want to have a matching activity like here, this one, where we've got the beginning of the joke and the end of the joke. Now, we said that up in phrasal verbs can be used to mean increase or improve. Of course, up can also be used to mean lots of other things as well. It's not the case that all phrasal verbs with up mean increase and improve. It can mean start or prepare. It can mean approach. It can mean separate. It can mean collect or come together. It can mean happen or create. It can mean finish or complete, damage, fail, join, fasten, discover, reveal, even surrender. So up can mean a whole load of different things. I just want you to take literally 1 minute to see how many of those you can match. Obviously, speak up is increase, improve. So is do up, we said. So is brighten up. The bottom one, look up, that could also be increase or improve. A lot of them have more than one meaning. Just literally take 1 minute to see which of those you can match. You don't have to write them in the chat box. Just have a quick look. Some of them are easy, some of them are more difficult. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this. I'm just going to catch up on some of the comments while you're having a look. Thank you, Julian Stamp, for pointing that out. Very good. This is a family show. Okay, let's very quickly go through this. All of these will be on the handout, so we don't have to spend too much time now looking at this, but start and prepare, draw up, for example, draw up plans or set up a business. Approach, catch up, you catch up with someone, you get closer to them, or you creep up on someone, you approach them. And there are lots more examples too for most of these. Separate, you split up, a couple might split up or break up. Collect or come together. Sweep up, if you sweep up the rubbish, you collect it. Or fold up a piece of paper, you bring the pieces together, they come together. Happen or create. Make up, you make up a story, you create a story. Or dream up a plan, you create it. Finish and complete. Use up, you use everything up in the cupboard. Or wind up, you wind up a business or a meeting. Damage, fail. Mess up, or play up. The computer's playing up, it's damaged in some way, it's not working properly. Join or fasten. Do up, you do up your buttons. Or zip up. Discover, reveal. Look up, you look up information in the dictionary or dig up information on someone. And the last one, surrender. give up, as somebody said there, or pay up. There's this idea if you pay up that you're surrendering your money in some way. So that's phrasal verbs with up. What do you think the metaphorical meaning of across is in these two phrasal verbs? What would be the metaphorical meaning? Anybody got any ideas? Meet by chance? Find something or meet someone by chance? Right. Find or discover, exactly, by chance. What about this one, the on in these phrasal verbs? What do you think the meaning of on is here? Connection? Activate, yes, exactly. Starting, with the idea of often starting to work or activating or starting to operate something. Yes. Beginning, exactly. What about these ones? All these phrasal verbs with out. What's the metaphorical meaning of out here? Identify, select. Select, understand, search, discover. Yeah, I think it's search or find. Exactly. You find out something. You pick out something, you're searching for it and choose it. And what about these? I think this one's quite difficult. All these phrasal verbs with about. What does the about mean? I think this is probably the most difficult one of all of these. Not seriously, yes, something like that. Linger, yes. Hang, right, exactly. It's something like have a lack of purpose or be inactive. All of these you mess about, you fool about, lounge about, hang about, all of them have this idea of there's no real purpose behind what you're doing. You're inactive. And a good phrasal verbs dictionary will organize them in this way and give you that meaning of the particle. What about these? What does the down mean? Yep, absolutely agree. Destroy. Quite right. Burn down, chop down, tear down, smash down. It means destroy. And the next one, all these phrasal verbs with off. Brick off, close off, fence off, rope off, cordon off, block off. What do you think the off means? Yes, absolutely. To separate. Quite agree. And the last set of these, what do you think? Now this is quite tricky as well. What do you think the out means here in these? Yeah, absolutely. Complete or finish. I think that's right. If you print something out, the out has this idea of you finish printing it. You carry something out, you finish doing it, you fill out a form. Now, of course, we can say fill in a form as well, but when we use out, there's this idea of completing it. And set out, not as in set out to do something, that means start, but set out in the sense of set out some results in a report, for example. It's like you've completed writing them down in some way. So complete or end up, or to the end, exactly. Can you give me any examples of phrasal verbs with out, where the out means help or support? Can you think of any phrasal verbs with out, where the out means help or support? Help out. Exactly. Hand out. Yep, I agree. Call out. Not sure about call out. Give out. Get out. Not sure about get out. Here are the ones I had. Hand out, help out, bail out. People have been talking about the EU bailing out governments, offering financial help and support. If you straighten someone out, you give them advice on how to better live their life. What about this one? We had do up and zip up, meaning fasten. Can you think of any other phrasal verbs meaning fasten, tighten, or restrict? Yes, tie up, absolutely. Shut up, thank you very much. Zip up, close up. Very good. Right, here are my examples. Close up, sew up, belt up, brick up, tape up. Even scrunch up, to scrunch up a piece of paper, means to tighten it. Can you think of any phrasal verbs with along that mean make progress. Get along, yeah, get along, go along, move along, absolutely. Get along, come along, drag along, the meeting was dragging along. We're moving along quickly. Can you think of anything with back that means return or repeat? Come back, absolutely. Get back, go back. Yeah, good. Call back, yes. In fact, there are hundreds of them. Bounce back, fall back on, pay back, read back, play back, hundreds and hundreds of them. Okay, we've just got a few minutes left. I did say we were going to finish early. I actually think we're going to finish on time. I just want for the last couple of minutes, when I did the last online conference talk on metaphor, we finished with some rebuses, which are pictorial or graphic presentations of language, and people seem to like them. So I thought we'd do just a few more, just to finish off, only take a couple of minutes, focusing on phrasal verbs. So, for example, this is a rebus. You have to say what you see. So here it's pretty obvious, and it's brighten up. That's the phrasal verb. Exactly, Rachel. So I'm going to put the rebus up, and no prizes, but you have to write down what you think it's saying. What's this one? We're going to do them quickly. First person to get it. Get up in the morning. Well done, Rachel. Exactly. Get up in the morning. Here's the next one. These are great to do with your students. Turn on the computer. Absolutely. Next one. This one. A bit confusing but funny. I agree. Turn over the page. Well done, Rachel. You're very good. Very quick. Turn over the page. All of these are on your handout, by the way. What about this one? Take over a company. Exactly. What about this one? Yeah, very good, Ahmed. Rise above adversity. Slightly trickier, this one. Look after the kids. Very good, Rachel. You're winning the prize so far. Look after the kids. And Sandhu's got that. Sundhu's, sorry. This one? Anyone got this one? Can't see it yet. Eden, I think got it right. Let's stay in tonight. And there it is explained for you. Let's stay in tonight. What about this one? Just a couple more. This one? No, not fall off. Not don't fall off. Yep, very good. Mary just got it. Don't fall behind. Don't fall behind. This one? Not shy off. Yes, what's the whole expression? No one's got it quite right. Shy away from risk. Very good. Shy away from risk. Next one. We've got 1 minute. Not stumble over a book, stumble across a book. Stumble across a book. Couple more. This one's easy. Do off a house. Yep. Next one's very easy. Knock down the wall. Very good. Next one. I think there are 2 more if I remember rightly. Don't answer back. Very good. Oh, a couple more. This one. To be snowed under. Very good. And I think this is the last one. This is my favorite one. Well done, Dell. Invite friends round. Invite friends round. So I'm going to, that is 45 minutes exactly. That's all I want to say. I am going to upload right now the handout with all of the slides. Do also, this slide is also on the handout. Do also have a look at the Macmillan Dictionary website online. There are some phrasal verb games on that. And there's also a website called phrasalverbdemon.com, which has some good resources on phrasal verbs. Let me just go to File. I'm going to upload this now. You should get a message in a second asking you if you want to accept a file. Just 1 second. I think you'll get a message in a second saying, do you want to accept the file? And if you click yes, then you'll be able to download the PDF of the slides. Oh, is that right? I don't think that is right. Henry, I think I might have made a mistake there. Can you cancel that, Henry? And let me just try again. I think that was the wrong file. I think it's this one. So it should be a PDF. Right, sorry about that. It's loading. It's going to take a while because it's a few megabytes. I hope that you enjoyed that. Thank you all very, very much for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of the online conference. I think it's break time now, but if anyone does have any questions, then Henry can be in charge of that.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yeah, that's right. There's a break coming up, which means we've got a few minutes. If you're happy to stay in the room, Malcolm, you're not rushing off for lunch. Where we could maybe do a quick Q&A if anyone's got anything they want to ask you. Write it in the chat box now. I saw a few things come in during the talk, but if you guys want to type away there, and I can put any questions to Malcolm. Any questions at all, guys?
Yeah, I'm glad you liked the presentation. Thank you all very much for your lovely comments.
Yes, lots of nice comments coming in. The file is still uploading, so
yeah,
you have to wait. Yeah, that's
I'm glad you all enjoyed it. That's super. But don't worry if you don't have any questions. I know it's lunchtime. I know you've been here a long time.
I'm seeing a few coming in. Malcolm, a question.
Yes.
A couple, in fact.
Okay.
How would you present phrasal verbs to intermediate students, level B1?
Well, yeah, I think the two ways that we've talked about in this session. I think definitely through the context of a topic. So in a reading text, for example, or a text on a certain topic, if it's, for example, travel, then you would expect, if it's a text about going to the airport, you'd expect the phrasal verb check in or take off to appear. So that's how I would want students to encounter it for the first time at B1 level. This is a Macmillan Online Conference, so just to plug my books for a second. At B1, if you're using Destination B1 or Laser B1, we do lots and lots of work on phrasal verbs in those two books, and we do it the two good ways. So we do it within the context of a topic, and we also do it by particle. So phrasal verbs with up, for example, where the up means increase or improve. That's what I would do with B1 students.
Great. And someone's asked, do native speakers struggle with phrasal verbs as well?
Right, I think that's a very good question. And I think generally the answer is no, they don't. And I think the reason they don't is because the fundamental logic and meaning of the particles is something that's instinctive to us and intuitive to us. And what that means is that people come up with new phrasal verbs. New phrasal verbs are being created all the time. And generally, I don't think people have any problems understanding them and knowing the first time they hear a new phrasal verb what it means. And it's because the particles aren't random. So for students of English, it may seem that the particles are random, But to a native speaker, they instinctively know, even if they're not very good at explaining what the particle means, they instinctively know what it does mean. So I don't think native speakers do have problems with phrasal verbs. Someone says, I got an error on my PDF file. It hasn't uploaded yet. It's still only on 63%. So you'll just have to wait a second. Any other questions? Hello? You still there? Henry, you still there? Yeah, and are there any other questions?
Yep. Any last questions from the audience at all? I'm keeping an eye on the chat here, if you do.
Yeah. Actually, I think I just saw one, which was something about are phrasal verbs appropriate? It's gone now, but I think it was there. Are phrasal verbs appropriate for academic language? I think it said. Is that right? Can you see that one, Henry? Maybe I dreamt it. But anyway, it's a very, very good question anyway. And the answer is some of them are and some of them aren't. And there are some phrasal verbs. A lot of research has been done on this, in fact. And if you look at a book like The Longman Grammar of Spoken and Written English, it goes into this in great detail. There are some phrasal verbs that are mainly used in academic English, and there are a lot of phrasal verbs that aren't ever really used in academic English. So you need a good phrasal verbs dictionary or a book like The Longman Grammar of Spoken and Written English to give you more information on that. Anything else? We're nearly uploaded now. We're on 85%.
Yep, slowly getting there. Do some phrasal verbs have more history than others? Is that a question you think you can answer, Malcolm? I've just seen that come in. Hi, Malcolm, are you there? Seems Malcolm might have just frozen and disappeared from the room there. I'm going to stick around now because we still need the documents to upload, which we were trying to share with you guys. It may have got stuck.